praises to the King, for he is the King of kings. We sing praises to the King, for he is the King of kings. Give him glory, for he is the King. Give him glory, for he is the King of kings. Give him glory, for he is the King. Give him glory, for he is the King. Here we go, ladies.
We sing the praises to the King, for he is the King of kings. We sing the praises to the King, for he is the King of kings. We sing the praises to the King, for he is the King of kings. We sing the praises to the King, for he is the King of kings. Give him glory,
For he is the King. Give him glory, for he is the King of kings. Give him glory, for he is the King. Give him glory, for he is the King of kings. Give him glory, for he is the King. Give him glory, for he is the King of kings. Give him glory, for he is the King. Give him glory, for he is the King of kings. All hail King Jesus. All hail Emmanuel. All hail King Jesus. All hail Emmanuel. I love this next part. He reigns. He reigns forever. He reigns forever. He reigns forever and evermore. He reigns forever. He reigns forever. He reigns forever and evermore.
he reigns forever. He reigns forever. He reigns forever and
Evermore.
He reigns forever. He reigns forever. He reigns forever
And evermore. He reigns forever. He reigns forever. He reigns forever and evermore. He reigns forever. He reigns forever. He reigns forever and evermore. He reigns. He reigns. He reigns forevermore. He reigns. He reigns. He reigns forevermore. He reigns forever. He reigns forever. He reigns forever and evermore. He reigns forever. He reigns forever. He reigns forever and evermore. All hail King Jesus. Can we give him a wonderful praise? Clap offering, yes. Jesus is certainly worthy of our praise. The Bible tells us that his grace is sufficient for all of our needs. Therefore we sing, your grace is great is your faithfulness, O God. You wrestle with the sinner's heart. You lead us by still waters and to mercy, and nothing can keep us apart. So remember your people, remember your children, remember promise, oh God. Your grace is enough. Your grace is enough. Your grace is enough for me. Great is your love and justice, God. You use the weak to lead the strong. You lead us in the song of your salvation, and all your people sing along. So remember your people, remember your children, remember your promise, oh God. Let's sing together, your grace. Your grace is enough. Your grace is enough. Your grace is enough for me. Your grace is enough. Your grace is enough. Your grace is enough for me. Father, we thank you. No matter where we are in life, your grace is sufficient for our needs. You don't abandon your children. Your promises are true. And when you resonate with that, thanks be to God. So remember your people. So remember your people. Remember your children. Remember your promise, oh God. Can we sing that again? Remember. So remember your people. Remember your children. Remember your promise, oh God. Your grace is enough. Your grace is enough. Your grace is enough for me. Your grace is enough. Heaven reaching down to us. Your grace is enough for me. God, I see your grace is enough. I'm covered in your love. Your grace is enough for me. For me. Let's celebrate the God of mercy, justice, grace. He is love. It's amazing. Our God never changes. Yesterday, today, and forever. He's always the same. He's like the anchor we can trust. We don't have to worry. The world shifts, but God does not shift. He stays the same. Well, good morning. Welcome to The Crossings. My name is Edwin, and it's so good to have you here. And can you believe it that we're already in the third weekend of October? Yes. My birthday's next week, just FYI. But I'm just thinking Thanksgiving is a month away, and then comes Christmas, and then 2020, and it's, where has the year gone? So it's amazing. Anyway, good to have you here. If you're visiting for the first time, we want to make sure that you fill out the connection card that's in your seat back pocket in front of you. And this is an opportunity for you to let us know how we can pray for you, how we can better serve you and come alongside you. Plus, if you take that completed connection card and you go to the break room, which is our amazing coffee house on the other side of this wall, which is open 6 days a week,
And I'm telling you, you never know who you're going to find when you go in there. It could be moms with their kids. It could be a business meeting, all kinds of stuff. So lots of fun. But if you take that connection card to the break room, to the barista after the service, you'll get a free bag of bread, I believe, and it's delicious. I've tried several of them. They're amazing, and they're all natural, no preservatives, that kind of thing. Cool? So, again, take that to the break room, and you'll have free bread. Now, for those of you who are not first-timers, you know the rule. You don't get free bread, but you can pay for yours, and you can take multiple loaves home. It's good. Excellent. Let's take a moment to say hello to one another and find someone maybe you haven't met before.
How do I say thank you for the way that you love and the way that you come, for all that you've done and all that you're doing. My heart pours out. Thank you. You don't have to come.
So we only have a couple of announcements this morning, and the first is that here at the Crossings, we've got an amazing series that happens the first Friday of every month. It's called Story Time. How many of you, by a show of hands, has been to Story Time, or maybe you know somebody who's been to Story Time? There we go. Yes, so one of the cool things that's happening with Story Time is we've got different storytellers coming from around Central Florida. In November, we're going to have a member of the Winter Garden Police Department come and read stories to our children. So you'll want to come unless you have an outstanding ticket, and maybe that might be, or a warrant, then you might want to think twice. I'm just kidding. No one here at the Crossings has that, right? But it's the first Friday of every month, so it'll be Friday, November 1st at 10 a.m. It goes to about a half hour, till 10:30, and it's always a good time. So invite neighbors, invite friends to bring their children, really any age. Cool. And then second of all, I want to bring to your attention in the bulletin where the bottom of, I was going to say page 3, but where it says Women's Study Group. They just kicked off their fall group study this past Thursday, and they had a wonderful time. They've made a decision to, the next time they would be scheduled to meet is on Halloween, October 31st. And so you can imagine there's a lot of family events going on. So what they're going to do is not meet on the 31st. So if you're one of the ladies who meets in that group, you will not be meeting on October 31st, but you'll come back 2 weeks after that at the normal scheduled meeting, which would be November 14th. Okay, if that sounds confusing, see me afterwards, and I'll unconfuse you, hopefully. Cool? Let's pray for the tithes and offering that we're about to give. You'll see on the screen there's several ways to give. Lord, we come before you, and we can never give to you all that you've given to us. It's just impossible. So we come before you with tithes, with offerings, and we bring them as a gift of love to you. We say thank you. We really give you our whole lives. We know you want more than just our finances, but it's just a small token of how much we love you. And we pray that you would multiply what's given today and use it so that your kingdom, more people will enter your kingdom and know about your great love. In Jesus' name.
You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you. I worship you.
Stand with us if you're able. We sing. miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are a way maker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are here, touching every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are here. You are here, healing every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are here. You are here, turning lives around. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, mending every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are way maker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, can we sing that again? You are way maker. You are way maker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are way maker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. That you're working, you never stop working, you never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are a waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. 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 Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you You are Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Let's sing that chorus one last time. You are Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are the Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are.
Praise God. God, this morning, each one of us probably have some kind of concept of who you are. Maybe it was based on our experience from last week. Maybe it was based on a disappointment, or maybe it was based on something that was really great. So today we think you're great, and tomorrow when the car doesn't start, we're going to think you're not so good anymore. And God, we're so up and down, and you can see right now as your eyes penetrate through into every person's life and heart and soul right now, you know exactly where we are. So God, we ask you to do what only you can do. You are the miracle worker. How you can take certain words and you can apply them differently to every life is something only you can do. So God, we're going to ask you to do that. We're going to ask you by the time we walk out here this morning, we're going to see you as the way maker. We're going to see you as the miracle worker. We're going to see you, one who sheds light in the darkness, because you're irresistible. We could just see who you were, God, who you are. It would just change everything. So God, we're asking you to do that for us this morning. And you just tweak us. You give us a better orientation. You give us a different perspective that will affect our lives tomorrow, the next day, and the next. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, you can be seated. It's good to have you here this morning. It actually was cool the last couple in the mornings. For any of you that were up at 6 o'clock or 5:30, did you notice that? Oh, you didn't? We weren't up. Okay, sorry. Yes. You know, my favorite things is I've got a back porch in my house, and so I spend usually just about every morning I can on that back porch. And so I just noticed I felt like I was in, what is it? Mary Poppins. Mary Poppins. I feel like I was in Mary Poppins never mind. Okay. Some of my growing up, speaking of my growing up days, you know, when I was growing up, first of all, my dad, I come from a military environment, excuse me just one second. I'm going to do something so I don't fall, okay? Here we go. This thing has got to be up like this, otherwise I will trip on it. Are we good now? Yeah. Now I won't embarrass myself. My dad was military, and so I very distinctly remember many times with my dad marching to the front door. He got us our little army hats. He was in the army, and we would march and we would salute. We'd do the whole 9 yards. And my dad had certain values, and I don't know whether they came from the military or not, but there were two things that my dad put into effect with my brother and I, that if we ever did either of these two things, we could totally expect the full brunt of his wrath. Okay, you probably know that when you think in your own growing up days, some things maybe your mom or dad had that they were way out there. The first one, get this, I don't even know where he got this, but the first one was spitting on somebody. You could never, ever, 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 ever spit on somebody. That was so degrading to the individual. So he told us this. Well, you can imagine as kids, we would do stuff. And I still remember the time. I can't remember what the argument was about, but I spit on my brother. And my brother told my dad. And I wasn't sure I was going to live through the day. So I still remember what I did as I went into my dad's tools, which was another thing that you don't ever do, but I did it. I went into my dad's tools and I got a hammer. You ever tried to do this? And I tried to hit myself in the head so I would have this big bump so that when I went in the house, I'd go, and I'd be crying because of this big bump. And you stop real short. It's just really hard to do. But I ended up getting a little bit of mark, but it didn't have that much effect because I got my dad's full wrath. But you know what the second thing was that would get my dad's full wrath? That he absolutely forbade us to do? And that was to call somebody a fool. He would never, ever, ever allow us to call somebody a fool. Those words were to never, ever cross our lips. So you can just imagine my surprise as I got older and I began to read the Bible, and I discovered that my hero, Jesus, actually called somebody a fool. You know, I go, all of my life, my dad's told me I can't do this, and now Jesus called somebody a fool. So I'm thinking, man, Jesus isn't into name calling, and he's so gracious and kind and loving. Whatever he called somebody a fool for must be really, 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 really serious for him to cross that line. Now, we've been in a series for the last couple months that's simply called Jesus Says. Jesus Says. And that grew out of my own personal awareness of how many people are very confused about what Jesus said and what he didn't say. And as a result, they end up resisting the irresistible Jesus because they think he's somebody that he isn't. And that's just so annoying. Can you imagine somebody that is such a good friend of yours and you hear people talk about him and you say, that's not what he's like at all. I hear people talking about Jesus all the time, and it's just kind of annoying sometimes because that isn't even what he's like. And so we decided to do this series, and I thought we need to look at some of the things that he said. We couldn't possibly look at all of them because of life. But we were actually look at the highlights. And by the way, you've already missed 7 or 8 of them. So if you want to go online and to our website, you can listen to, and there's live streaming there. It's not live streaming when you watch it, but this is being live streamed, so you can catch that up. It's online within an hour or so of the service. But I encourage you to go and read and look at some of these, because you may be surprised at some of the things that Jesus said and some of the things that he didn't say. So this morning, what we're going to be looking at is what in the world was it that was so serious, that was so awful, that was so bad, that would actually cause Jesus, who's a God of love, to label somebody that he dearly loved as a fool. Now, the dictionary.com, those of us, I grew up using Webster's and all this stuff, and I still have the volumes on my bookshelf, but it's really easy to just get online. With dictionary.com, here's how it defines fool. A silly or stupid person, one who lacks judgment or sense. A silly or stupid person, I didn't say that comes off, dictionary.com. Silly or stupid person, one who lacks judgment or sense. Now, there's synonyms, which means words that are kind of used to say the same thing. Synonyms like dunce, blockhead, idiot, numbskull, ignoramus, imbecile. What would you have to do today to warrant, being called those kind of things, get that kind of branding, maybe jump out of a 10-story building thinking you could fly? You go, man, what a blockhead, what a numbskull, what an ignoramus. Or maybe invest all your life savings and all your money in a stock tip from a stranger you don't even know. You just met him on the street. Go, that would be really, really dumb. Or maybe to bet on the Dolphins winning the Super Bowl this year, And those of you that are for the Steelers and for everybody, you be careful too, because, wouldn't that be crazy to bet so much money on something that I can look pretty sure is just kind of crazy? That would be being an imbecile, wouldn't it? One day, Jesus was speaking to some folks, and before he finished in this conversation, he ended up calling a guy a fool. And this is the only time in all the recorded dialogue of Jesus that he ever used this word to describe somebody. So like I said, you've got to stop and think, what in the world could a person have done that would be so stupid, so silly, that would warrant Jesus calling him a blockhead? Calling him an ignoramus. It must be something really, really bad. Now, this is found in the third gospel, Matthew, Mark, Luke chapter 12. And if you grew up in church or if you've been around the crossings for very long, there's a good chance you've heard this before. So let me just say something to you that have heard this before. I'm going to challenge you to pay extra special attention. Because what happens is the more familiar we are with something, the more we disconnect from it. And we miss it. And I don't want us to miss it. I don't want us to miss it. I hope by the time we get to the end, it'll kind of jar you, and you say, oh, that's why I don't want to miss this. Because the last thing I ever want to be called is a fool. And there's a good chance right now that if Jesus were to come right now, he might go through our crowd here, and some of us might actually get that label of fool. So I want you to really pay attention to this and to connect with this. Now, Jesus in Luke chapter 12 was kind of caught in the crossfire of a guy who felt like his brother had shafted him on the will settlement. Apparently the father had died and there was a dividing up, and he didn't think he got a fair shake, so he's trying to talk to Jesus to get Jesus to side with him so he can make more. Jesus doesn't get embroiled in this whatsoever. He's very wise in some of the things. It's amazing sometimes when I read and Jesus is asked a question and then he answers it and I go, that really wasn't the question. How did he get there? Jesus a lot of times doesn't get involved in little particulars. We're always trying to get involved in little particulars. He tried to get the big principles to capture people's minds so it would really relate to everybody, not just to one little conversation. So Jesus isn't going to get involved in this, but instead he uses it as an opportunity to launch into a story that will focus into a subject that he repeats again and again and again through the four Gospels. And that's simply this: living with the big picture perspective of eternity in mind. Making your decisions, living your life based on the big picture perspective of eternity. He talked about this very, very frequently throughout the Gospels. It's one of the main things that he talked about. Let's start with when he gets into the story. Luke chapter 16, 12 and verse 16. He said, and he told them this parable. Parable was a story that kind of had, a meaning, underlying meaning to it. The ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. So we find out right out of the chute this guy is rich. He's really, really, really successful. Everything he touches seems to turn to gold. He's the kind of guy that would make it on the front page of Forbes magazine. He'd be included in the who's of the wealthiest people in the world in Forbes. No doubt they used words like brilliant and innovative and one of a kind, and seems to always come out on top no matter what's thrown at him. Those are probably the kind of words they use to describe this person. Let's keep reading, verse 17. He thought to himself, this wealthy landowner, what shall I do? I have no place to store my crops. And he said, this is what I'll do. I'll tear down my barns and I'll build bigger ones, and there I will store my surplus grain. He's acquiring so much, he's doing so well, he's so successful, he just doesn't know what to do with it all. So what he does is he commissions his staff to make some major renovations to his vast empire, to tear down all the existing warehouses. They become too small, they become too antiquated, and to build new state-of-the-art ones so they could store all his artwork and all his antique cars and all his props from Star Wars from the movie sets. He just had to have all this stuff. So he needs bigger places to store all this stuff that he's acquired. Now look at verse 19. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy. Eat, drink, and be merry. After this construction is complete, he's sitting in his high-rise office suite that overlooks his vast empire, and he thinks to himself, you're good. You are good. You are ingenious. You've flat done it. You've arrived. Now it's time to kick back from the rat race. It's time to enjoy the fruit of your labor. You've spent years cutting corners. You spent years making deals and wise investments and stockpiling everything you could get your hands on. And now it's time to cash in on your returns and start to marinate in the spoils of all your labor. You've worked hard and you deserve it. Sounds like the dream of a lot of people, doesn't it? Maybe it sounds like your dream. You've worked so hard all your life. Now it's time to get some land up in North Carolina on a golf course and a lake. Get a boat and divide your time between golfing and fishing. And in between times, you can go on a cruise to start checking things off your bucket list. It's time to eat, drink, and be merry. You've worked hard, and by golly, you deserve it. Sound good? But then comes a line in this story that catches everyone by surprise. Because they're thinking it's going to end, and they all lived happily ever after. Or so it is with those that work hard, plan ahead, and invest wisely. That's how we'd expect this kind of story to end, isn't it? Look at verse 20. But God said to him, you fool. Wow, there's that word my dad said never to use. You fool. This very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? Now you're thinking, come on, I don't get. He must have really done something bad that is in between the lines someplace. I mean, like they end up discovering that he'd been cheating on his wife for years, had a mistress at every port. You know, must have been involved in adultery and all kinds of, illicit sexual activity. Or maybe he'd been embezzling millions, falsifying the tax returns and taking millions of dollars from his company for years. Maybe he really was a drug cartel. Maybe that's really what he was doing. Come on. What did he do, being this wise, smart, brilliant businessman, that was so bad to earn the title of dunce, or the title of blockhead, or imbecile? How could the most loving, compassionate, gracious person who ever walked this planet call somebody that? What did he do that was so bad? Look at verse 21. This is how it'll be through whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich toward God. That sends chills down me even as I say it. So it'll be for the person who stores up all kinds of things for themselves. Their entire orientation, their whole life was about them, but they never thought about being rich toward God. As God sat atop of his universe looking at this guy, someone he'd actually created in his image, somebody he loved incredibly and made them as a masterpiece. The only word that he could find to describe him was not brilliant, was not innovative, but fool, a silly, stupid person lacking sense or judgment, not because he made a lot of money. Not because he was a successful business genius, not at all. But because he used all the hours and all the days and all the weeks and all the months and all the years of his one and only life. He used all the resources that God had blessed him with, only for himself, with no thought of eternity. He squandered his one and only life. And when the game was over, he ended up losing everything. What in the world went wrong? Up till that point, the story looked so good, didn't it? Yeah, the American dream, this is so cool. What went wrong? 20 years ago, it's been on the front page of the magazines that I've seen them as I'm checking out at Publix, since I've been reminded of this. In 1999, JFK Jr., son of late President John F. Kennedy, he crashed this single-engine plane that he was piloting into the ocean off of Martha's Vineyard. I'm sure some of you remember that. And he, along with his wife and his wife's sister, were all killed in the crash. Of course, they did a massive investigation. In their investigating, it revealed that in making his descent into Martha's Vineyard, he experienced what's called spatial disorientation. I've flown a lot in single-engine planes, flown all over the country in them. So I understand this. If the horizon is very, very critical that you keep your orientation really correct. But in the haze and in the darkness, because it was at night, it threw off his orientation of where the horizon was. And it caused him to miscalculate. And this distorted perception of reality confused his judgment and caused him to crash into the ocean, where it cost 3 people their lives. Jesus called this man a fool because he lived with a distorted perception of reality. And his distorted perception caused him to make a very costly miscalculation. Look at this. This is what happened. In his zest and enthusiasm for life, which is wonderful, he never took into account the reality of eternity. He never thought about that. He was so excited about the here and now. He was so involved in what everything was doing. He never took into account the reality of eternity. He never had a line item on his things that matter spreadsheet for the things that mattered to God. It was only about the things that mattered to him. Only about the things that mattered with his family. Only thing that was important was what was going on in the moment. He never took into account that all his investments were in things that were destined to be left behind at the grave, resulting in a big fat zero when he took that final breath. So the only word God could find, Jesus could find to describe such a short-sighted, silly person was fool. Because he failed to take into account being rich toward God. You know, in the world of investing, and some of us here, I'm sure, do that. Some of you don't. But in the world of investing, there's a key word. And I've talked about this before. The key word, it's abbreviation, it's ROI. People will talk in conversations about ROI. You wonder, they talk about ROI, return on investment. What's the return on the investment? What's the ROI? How much am I going to get back on my investment? And there's really two key factors in all of this. And we're not going to spend a lot of time on this. I'm just going to mention it because Jesus talks about this. We'll see that in a minute. Time and rate of return. All investments are based on time, how much time you're going to put in, let it sit there to invest, and what's going to be the rate of return. How long are you going to hold on to that investment before you cash it in? And when you do, what are you going to get? How long are you going to hold on to it? And when you cash it in, what are you going to get? You know, when I was looking to start a business, it was back in the early 90s. I started several of them, but I remember this one specifically. I did a ton of research. I looked into the projected ROI, return on investment, of various kinds of businesses. For every dollar I was going to put into the business, and I put a lot of them in there, how long would it take for me to get my dollar back? And once I got my dollar back, how many additional dollars would I make off of that recouped dollar? You get this? It's not rocket science. It's very simple. I'm going to take a dollar. I'm going to put it over here. I'm going to wait some time. I'm going to do some work. How long is it going to take me to actually get my dollar back? So many times you look at people who seem to be doing so well, but they're in debt up to their ears because they haven't even gotten their own money back yet. If you put $100,000 in something, you get $5,000 back that month, you go, oh, I'm rich. No, now you're just down $95,000. So it takes a while to get your investment back, but the return is once you've got it all back, once you've recouped that, then how much more are you going to get over time? Like I said, this is just 101 of business. So here's what I had to do. I just actually put these up here. Number one, here's what I had to give up something now. Money. I had to give up hard-earned, worked-for money. I had to give up something now to get back something later, which was more money. Okay? Pretty simple. Don't want to lose any of us on that. I had to give up something now because I couldn't take that dollar and go buy a pair of shoes. I had to take that dollar, say I'm going to wear my old shoes, and I had to put it in this investment that I was working toward. But I did that not just carelessly. I did that because I was thinking in time I'd be able to buy 10 pairs of shoes because I would be getting my money back. So basically what I was doing is this. I was exchanging now for later. That's all investing is. And that's why it's so hard for some people to do it, because you don't want to give up now in order to get to later. Now, later, you wish you'd given up the now, because the now is now the past. And now the present is, oh, gee, I wish I'd done that, right? Some of us have been there. Okay? So that's what it is. I was exchanging now for later. So we have to have a good understanding of this now and later thing in order to do any kind of investing. And here's why. The whole idea of investing is to be around to enjoy your return. That's the point. Moving too fast for you? All right. Whole idea of investing is to be around to enjoy your return. Now, let's say that I knew I was going to live to be 80 years old, or you knew you were going to live to be 80 years old. I don't think it'd be real smart to do a 10-year investment that you're not going to get back at 75. At 75, I know I'm going to die at 80, but I'm going to put all my money in here in this thing. I'm going to get it back at 85. Oh, I won't be here in 85. Well, that was kind of dumb. You say, that was a stupid way to invest. Because the whole point of it is you want to enjoy the return of your investment. Let's say your car needs tires. Some of you may be there right now. Your car needs tires. But you're planning to sell your car in 6 months. Now, I'll bet you're probably not going to invest in 60,000-mile tires, which are more expensive, because you won't be around to enjoy that. Somebody else is going to get to enjoy. That was dumb. I spent all this money so somebody else can be driving her. No way. I'm getting the 30,000-mile rated ones. They're a lot cheaper. Smart? Yeah. But if you plan to keep your car for years and years, you're probably going to pay a little bit more now to get those 60,000 mile rated tires, because you're thinking long term. You're thinking a different perspective. You're thinking over a long period of time you want to be able to enjoy this. Be kind of foolish to pay a lot for something when you're not going to be able to be around to enjoy that. Can you please get this in your head? It would be really, really stupid to pay a lot for something that you're not going to be able to be around to enjoy. Jesus gets this. Oh, does he get this? In fact, in his most famous sermon, called the Sermon on the Mount, which is recorded in the book of Luke and in the Gospel of Matthew, he talks about this. Some of you have heard this verse, but listen like as you're hearing it for the first time. Matthew chapter 6, starting in verse 9. Don't store up yourselves treasures on earth. Why not? Don't store up treasures where moths and rust are going to destroy and where thieves are going to break in and steal. It's a little bit high risk, okay? Next verse, verse 20. He says, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where moths and rust don't destroy. There, what's heaven like? Well, no moths and no rust. We know that right now, okay? And no thieves. So where moths and rust do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. You've got to understand something. Please get this. Oh, please get this. God is not anti-money. Jesus is not anti-wealth. But please hear this. He is very, very, very anti his followers making foolish investments in things they're not going to be around to enjoy. Can you get that? He's not anti-money. He's not anti-wealth. He's just anti his followers making all kinds of stupid investments when they're not going to be around to be able to enjoy them. So he tells us the absolute best, the absolute most secure place to deposit our investments so we'll be able to enjoy them for the longest period of time. Now, wonder if some financial person told you that. You would go, oh, this is great. This is fantastic. You know where he says the best place to invest it is? The bank of heaven. The bank of heaven. Because if you're a follower of Jesus, that's where you're going to spend the majority of your life. Boy, understand this. That's where you're going to spend the majority of your life. If everything ends at the grave, if this game is only about 50, 60, 80, 90 years, then it makes perfect sense to live your life in a way where you can cash in on all your investments during those 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 years. That makes perfect sense, and I tell you to do it. But if the game is more than 60 or 80 or 90 years, if we're talking eternity, then you have to think about the whole thing of ROI from a completely different perspective, because you want to make sure that your returns are going to go past the grave. Are we hearing this? We want to make sure our returns go past the grave. Because if they don't, you know what happens? You lose it all. That's why Jesus says not taking this into account is the most foolish thing any person could ever do. So don't do it. So don't do it. See, at the end of the day, we only really have two currencies for investing, two commodities that we can invest. I'm sure we could divide all these down and come up with 10, but I'm going to give you two big categories of currencies we can invest. One's our time, and the other's our money. Those are two things that you can only spend them one place, because once they're gone, they're gone. You never get them back. Our time and our money. And Jesus talks very directly about both of these. Again, in the Sermon on the Mount, which when I say that, the Sermon on the Mount, most of you know what I'm talking about. It was this major sermon that Jesus gave after he chose his original followers, his 12 disciples. This is the first thing they did. He actually says he was teaching to them, but there was a lot of eavesdroppers. So all kinds of people were listening on as he was talking to his disciples about what it was going to be like to follow him. And do you know that 20% of the Sermon on the Mount, which takes 3 chapters, Matthew 5, 6, and 7, talks about money or refers to money? 20%. 1 out of every 5 verses has something to do with finances or something to do with money. You think Jesus thinks this is important stuff? He doesn't need your money, by the way. He's doing fine. He's doing really fine. Let's read those verses again. Let's read them again. Get them back in our mind. Don't store up for yourselves treasures. Don't store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moths and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. Next verse. He says, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where moths and rust do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. Again, he doesn't say that using your money to wisely meet your needs and to set aside for the future is wrong. In fact, you know, he encourages that. The scriptures encourage that all over the place. But what he's saying is be careful that you don't get carried away and end up investing too much in a sinking ship. That would be downright foolish. Don't treasure the stuff that depreciates and loses its value 5 minutes after you walk out of a store. Bad treasure. It's going south. Don't put your life savings and your most valuable things into investments where moths and rust can destroy and where that kind of stuff can get stolen. That's crazy. So Jesus says, don't do it. It doesn't make good economic sense. It's foolish. You think, well, what is there that's not going to depreciate? I haven't seen a whole lot of things. What is it not going to depreciate? What is it not going to lose value? What is it not going to rust or get stolen? Come on. You're kind of making the playing field kind of small here, aren't you? You know, one day when Jesus was addressing a crowd on this subject, he asked an extremely penetrating question. I'm just going to put that question up here on the screen. Mark chapter 8, verse 36 and 37. He says, what good is it for someone to gain the whole world? Think of all the things you'd like. To gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul. Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? He's saying, let's talk profit and loss here for a second. Let's talk real value. Let's talk blue chip stocks. Let's not talk penny stock. Let's talk some really good things. If you take everything in the world, everything out there, and you stack it on one side of the ledger, the house, the cars, the toys, the trips, the trinkets, all the technology gadgets, you take all of that, put it on one side, and on the other side of the ledger, you put a single human life, an eternal soul created in the image of God. When all is said and done, that one single human life far outweighs everything else. Can I just say to you, with no uncertain terms, human life is the highest value in God's economy. Human life is the highest value in God's economy. And every investment you make in the life of an eternal living soul, every time you exchange a dollar that you could use for something depreciating and say, I'm investing in the life of someone who matters to God, ching, ching, it's a deposit in the bank of heaven. Ching, ching, it's a deposit in the bank of heaven. And it'll be returned to you at an unbelievable rate for all of eternity. Exactly, people ask, what does a return look like? I go, I don't know. I give you some ideas from Scripture, but quite honestly, I don't know. But since God is extremely creative and extremely capable, since he's literally out of this world, I'm sure it's going to be way beyond my wildest expectations. Do you know that when the Apostle Paul was writing, he says, you know, God's able to do exceeding abundantly. Get this thought. Just think of this for a second. I pray this to God, by the way, all the time. God's able to do exceeding abundantly beyond anything we can ask or think. So after I've asked God things, I said, now, God, can you please go way beyond this? Go way beyond this, because this is about as high as I can go. But you can go way farther than anything I can ask or think. So I'm not even going to start to tell you what that return is going to be, except it's going to be way beyond anything I can ask or think, or that you can ask or think. The next verse in Matthew 6 really captures something that I've gone back to many times in my life, and I could have spent the whole time just talking about this, but I'm just going to drop on us for a second. In the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 6 and verse 21, he says, "For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." Where your treasure is, that's where your heart will be also. This is such a huge topic. Where your treasure is, that's where your heart's going to be also. If you invest in the things that matter to God, one of the things it does is it purifies your heart in a way that keeps from having your life from getting choked out by greed and desire. It keeps that from happening. It moves your heart closer to the heart of God because you find yourself loving what he loves. Some of you that do invest in stocks, which, by the way, I don't, because I got somebody else who does this stuff for me, because I don't even want to think about it. But can I tell you why I don't want to think about it? One of the reasons? Because I want my thoughts to be someplace else. I really do. I want my thoughts to be someplace else. There were times when I did do stocks, and guess what I did every day? I'm checking the paper to see how my stocks are doing, because that's my money on there. I got to see how it's doing. You know what happens when you invest in something that matters to God? Your heart's always checking into God. God, how are we doing? Praying for this person. God, I put some money into this. God, how are they doing? God, it suddenly directs your heart. It directs your passion. And what has Jesus said the greatest commandment is? To love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And if your money is not going into what God loves, you'll have a very hard time loving God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. You'll love what your money's in. So this is really a safeguard. Like I said, I would like to speak hours on this because it so saddens me when people are saying, well, I wish I could love God more. I said, let me see your checkbook. Can I tell you why you don't love God more? It's not hard. It's not rocket science. I'm not that smart. It's just pretty logical. I can just see this. Now, the other currency we have for investing in the bank of heaven is our time. Is our time. Several weeks ago, we looked at a conversation Jesus had with some of his closest followers about greatness, which is something that they, right along with us, all want. We all want to be great. They'd all bought into the party line. The greatness was all about being elevated above other people, that being served, that means you're great. Being treated special by those who are at lower rungs on the food chain. They're just like us. They thought about it just like we do. But Jesus was quick to adjust their thinking on this because he knew that kind of orientation would crash them right into the ocean, and they would suffer tremendous loss. So he went on to explain to them the key to being rich toward God, the key to investing in the bank of heaven was not to be a taker with your time, but to be a giver with your time. Not to orient their time around self-promotion and self-serving and self-advancing activities, but to revolve it around the people that God loves and cares for. I can just hear these guys saying, this is probably what I would do, because I always like clarity. I say, what do you mean? What do you mean? And Jesus may have said, I don't know, because these things really happen. I don't know if he talked about it in this moment, but I can just hear him saying something like this. Hey, guys, remember when we passed by that blind guy? And they're going, what blind guy? Where's the blind guy? I don't remember a blind guy. Oh, yeah. A couple weeks ago, that real annoying guy that kept getting in the road and begging. Yeah, we remember him. Well, guys, do you remember what I did? Yeah. You stopped. You stopped all of us. We were kind of in a hurry, but you stopped us, and we're going, Yeah, you stopped, and you talked with him, and you valued him, and you used the resources you had to heal him. And I can just hear Jesus say this. That's how you're rich toward God. by not being so involved in your own stuff that you miss the needs of those around you. You notice the unnoticed because they matter. That's how you're rich toward God. Because you're focusing on people that I love. You were focusing on your schedule. You were focusing on hurry. You were focusing on how annoying it was that you couldn't get there a little bit earlier. I don't know why you wanted to get there earlier, because we had nothing to do, but you just had to get there earlier. And you're ready to walk right by this guy. You're rich toward God by copying what I did. Then he might have said, remember the time, guys, a month or so ago, when there was a bunch of people listening to me. Bunches of people listening to me, and I'd gone a little bit long. I kind of go a little bit long sometimes, Jesus says, but it was getting late. People were hungry. Do you remember what you guys wanted to do? And they looked at each other. Yeah, I wanted to send them all away, get them away from us. I wouldn't want a bunch of hungry people milling around. Go buy some food someplace. Then he probably said, do you remember what I did? He said, yeah. You had all 5,000 of them sit down on the grass. And you told them to divide in 50s, groups of 50s and 100. Don't know how they did that. If they counted off, don't know. But that's actually what Jesus said. Had them give in groups of 50 to 100. Jesus was actually pretty organized. He said, then you remember what I did? Yeah, you took this kid's lunch and you kind of did your special Jesus thing on it and multiplied it and made a bunch of stuff, made enough for everybody. And then I can just hear Jesus say this, and then do you remember what I said to you? Then do you remember what I said to you? Yeah. You told us to pass it out. That was exhausting. Jesus, do the math. There were 5,000 of them, 12 of us. That's at least, we had to each serve at least 420 people. Wow. Then we had to pick it up afterwards and collect it all. It was one exhausting day. And then I can just hear Jesus say this. That's how you invest in the bank of heaven. Not by helping only when it's easy or convenient, but when it's hard and inconvenient and exhausting, because people matter. I've written on my whiteboard in my office. I said, God, let me be a person of conviction and not convenience. Convenience robs the bank of heaven because we never have time. Because we're always busy. Because we've always got so many things to do. The man in our story was very inconvenienced and he was very exhausted, but it was only for himself. He used his financial resources only to float his own boat. Never thinking of his money and of his time as the currency he could use for becoming rich toward God. And in the end, he ended up losing it all. And God could think of only one word to describe such a short-sighted, careless man. Fool. Those of you that know me, some of you know me better than others, you've probably noticed and maybe even commented and maybe even been annoyed at how I seem to have no problem asking people to step up and serve in various ways, or to give money for causes that will affect the lives of people. Some of you think this is kind of strange. And you say, well, I could never do that. So let me tell you why I can do this with such ease. I say it with a smile. I say it with tremendous ease. So this is an aha moment for you. Newsflash. I firmly believe with all my heart what Jesus says about the ROI, the return on investment of our time and of our money. And I've tried to use this as a criteria for the decisions I've made over the years. And I plan to use it for the criteria for the decisions I plan to make in the future. I don't ever want to forget this. I don't ever want it to get old, ever. And I don't ever want any single one of you to cross the finish line and have the God who loves you and who died for you and who resourced you to look you in the eye and say, you fool. You took the one and only life that I gave you. You took all the things that I resourced you with. You took the money and the time and the talents and the skills I gave you, and you invested them only in the here and now. You invested them only in things that would serve yourself. And those things are not going to last. And you never took into consideration the things that mattered to me. And so in the end, it's going to be a bust. It's going to be a big fat zero. Oh, I still love you. I still love you. Have you ever thought about that with your kids? Yeah, I could never say that to my kids. Oh, yeah, I could say that to my kids because I love them. I don't ever want that to happen to you, ever. I don't want you to miss the chance to live beyond yourself, to live beyond the moment, and the opportunity to lay up treasure in heaven. So till the day that I take my last breath, if God gives me this opportunity, I want to give you the opportunity, even if you're exhausted, even if you're busy, even if you're experiencing your own financial challenges, I want to give you the opportunity without apology to invest in the bank of heaven. And then it's on you. It's not on me. There's no judgment coming from me. But I won't stop giving you the opportunity. Ever. So if God were to choose one word this morning to define your life, one word, he only has one word, what would it be? What would it be? Smart, brilliant, clever, creative, hard worker, deal maker, wise, or fool. And it's really not hard to figure this out, by the way. All you need to do is take a look at your bank statement and take a look at your schedule. Very simple. I'm not asking you to have any PhDs or know any algorithms or anything. And just take a look and see where your time and where your money goes. Because at the end of the day, the end of the week, end of the month, end of the year, you've generated a profit and loss statement for your life, at least for that period of time. You've generated a P&L for your life. And you have to ask yourself if you like what you see. Do you like what you see? Is the exchange going to give you a good return that you're going to be happy 1,000 years from today? Can you visualize this? When you look at that, are you going to be happy with the return it's going to give you for what you're doing with that time, for what you're doing with that money 1,000 years from today? Because I guarantee you that will happen. That will happen. I sincerely hope so. Because Jesus went to a lot of effort to make sure none of us would ever have to hear those words that I'm sure that guy lived with for all of eternity. Okay? Stand and pray with me. God, thank you. Thank you that you love us so much, that you tell us the end of the story at the beginning. It kind of ruins it, but you want us to know. You want us to know so we can have the end that you want for us. Thank you for giving us choice. Thank you for not mandating things. That's not love. You make us do it. That would not be love at all, God. Thank you for giving us the opportunity. Thank you for giving us dollars and giving us the choice where they go. You're not going to make the choice. Thank you for giving us our days and hours and months and years. Thank you for what you've given to us, God. You're so gracious. You've given us way more than we deserve. And you never tell us what we have to do with it, but you warn us ahead of time. Because every day, today, tomorrow, the next day, this week, we are going to be investing our time and we're going to be investing our money. And God, we want to be wise investors because we want a great return on our investment, one that we'll be happy with 1,000, 2,000, 2 million years from today, God. Help us to think this way. Help us to think now and later, that the reality of now is what's going to shape later. So God, thank you in your love. You've been so gracious to us to let us know this up front. In Jesus' name, amen.
Take my life and let it be consecrated, Lord, to Thee. Take my moments and my days, let them flow in ceaseless praise. Take my hands and let them move at the impulse of Thy love. Take my feet and let them be swift and beautiful for Thee. Take my voice and let me sing, always only for my King. Take my lips and let them be filled with messages from Thee. Take my silver and my gold, not a mite would I withhold. Take my intellect and use every power as You choose. Here am I, all of me. Take my life, it's all for Thee. Take my will and make it Thine. It shall be no longer mine. Take my heart, it is Thine own. It shall be Thy royal throne. Take my love, my Lord, I pour at Thy feet, its treasure stored. Take myself and I will be ever only all for Thee. Take myself and I will be ever only all for Thee. Here am I.
It's one of the most beautiful things we can say is just to give to our God our lives and say, here we are. And he'll take care of the rest. Even if you feel like, Lord, there's not much to work with, he'll take care of that. He'll give us the energy, the strength, the conviction, all we need to live for him. Amen. Well, thank you for being here this morning. Hope you have a wonderful afternoon, and we'll see you back here next week, same time, same place.